So this talk, I studied poli-sci as an undergrad, so I was especially excited for this talk. Joseph Yuska works with Blue State Digital, where he runs all their QA work. And Blue State Digital happened to work for the Obama campaign twice. So he's going to share a little bit about how our Atlassian suite can be used in a incredibly fast-changing and historic, series of events. And some things you should know about Joseph. He actually began his career in broadcasting as a writer, producer, and award-winning director in regional television. So that's kind of cool. And his favorite thing on the internet is Comic Sans.
Thank you. I swear to God, I really don't like Comic Sans. Somebody in the marketing department had it in for me. So thank you for coming. I'm going to be talking a bit about how we drove a presidential campaign using the Atlassian tools. As Elena said, I am the director of QA for Blue State Digital. Blue State Digital is an agency and a technology company that we develop and run fundraising, outreach campaigns, and a lot of other services for companies, campaigns, nonprofit organizations that engage people that they care about the most. For example, as I'll be talking about, we work with the Obama campaign, but we also work with organizations like the NAACP, the Green Bay Packers, Ford, and a number of other nonprofit organizations, political organizations, and companies. My tech department builds what we call the tools. The tools is, in my opinion, unbiased of course, the best platform overall for outreach and engagement of people you're trying to get in touch with. And what we do is we have a system that will say you have petitions. We collect those names. We process donations, contributions. We do we have a mass mailer that we use that sends out millions of emails. If you got any emails from the presidential campaign in 2012, that was us. And I make no apologies, sorry. But anyway, campaigns, I've been in software for about 18 years. The campaigns, how many folks here are software development companies? Okay, most of you. It's nothing like any client work you've ever done. Campaigns are designed for a single purpose over a period of time that is absolutely set in stone as a maximum. This was the best quote I've heard in a long time about it. It's by a journalist named Theodore White, who covered many presidential campaigns, covered the Korean, Vietnam War, and there is no excitement anywhere in the world, short of war, to match the excitement of the American presidential campaign. And the word excitement there is kind of like the old, may you live in interesting times curse. So my company was involved in the 2008 and the 2012 campaign. Very big differences. In 2008, as I hesitated a little bit ago talking about the fixed time. In 2008, when you're just a candidate running, you're going through the primary system. Now, I know there's a lot of non-Americans here, might not be familiar. When you are running for president, you go through a series of primaries in each state, and it's sort of an elimination contest to see who gets to represent your party in the final election in November. Any point in time during that primary campaign, it could just shut down for you. You lose the wrong primary, you're out. So the development was very, very fast-paced, and you only had to have something work for the next 3 days, guaranteed. You didn't have long-term planning. You didn't have scalability. You didn't care about that sort of thing. You were worried about making sure you got your information out for South Carolina coming up next Tuesday. 2012, however, was big. As an incumbent, we knew we had from April of 2011 to November of 2012 to run this campaign. There was no opposition. There were no primaries to worry about. We just had to worry about making sure we kept the campaign on the campaign kept itself on an even pace. Us as a vendor had to provide the technology. So in 2012, OFA is short for Obama for America, by the way. I have this a few different places. It's the actual official name of the campaign. OFA had several tech teams. Instead of a small group of people during the primaries in 08, there were set teams. There was a technical team. There was a development team on the front end. There were several social media teams, a whole bunch of different technology teams, other technical vendors, and Blue State itself had grown. We grew from about a dozen people to well over 35 in just our development organization over those 4 years, as well as having hundreds of more clients. Besides that, we also had to support. Now, I pulled this out of, when I was putting together the slides, pulled this out of our JIRA. Over the course of 7 months during the campaign, average of 4 developers and 1 QA person, we processed almost 1,200 JIRA tickets. Oops. Hey, there's a button there too. That kind of pace is unheard of for that number of people. And we had to do that in ways we had never done before. We had spent the past 4 years building the business, building our processes, building out clients, making the tools more mature. So we had a whole bunch of challenges we approached during the campaign. We had a lot of stakeholders, tons of stakeholders, everybody with a voice. From campaign executives, our tech team that had grown, their tech teams, integrated vendors. And when you use the tools, that control panel I put up there earlier is for everybody that uses any of our modules. Say you're in charge of coordinating events. You get in there and you use our tools to process event invitations, whatever the data you're pulling in. So at any given time, as QA manager, I had 1,100 people filing bugs for me at any given time, potentially. There were also a lot of communication issues. So you've all done third-party integrations. You've all done these massive projects where there are all these different channels of communication. Unfortunately, they're almost always email. And frankly, it sucked. It was so awful because there were all these threads going around. People would jump off threads. People would jump on threads. Or somebody would refer something, and, oh, I wasn't on that thread, so I have no idea what you're talking about. The other problem was the internal resources, nobody shared them. Everybody's very, very security conscious. And this is not unique to the campaign, of course, but it made a challenge for us. So we decided to try and attack these channels of communication first. As I said, email was the common approach. We found that there were many, many threads about the same thing. One morning, I came in and I realized halfway through reading my emails, I was reading 5 threads with 5 different groups of people all talking about the exact same thing. And it came to the point where in the morning, I'd get up, take a look at my email, and say, no, the heck with this. We needed to be reactive and fast. Example here is this scene from the second presidential debate. During that debate, campaign workers were queuing up responses. As soon as the moderator said thank you and good night, there was a button that was pushed that sent out a ton of emails. All those emails were prepared ahead of time and had to be set ready to go. There were a bunch if they did well, there were a bunch if they didn't do well, and there was a bunch in the middle just in case. So we had to make sure everything was running there and 0 bugs. There was no tolerance for any problems because timing is essential to a campaign. We had an on-site presence that helped a lot with these communications, of course. We had an engineer, one of our senior developers, and a customer support person moved from Boston to Chicago and were embedded there in the campaign offices. And we also had a number of company employees that left the company to work on the campaign, which helped a lot because at least they had an idea of the same kind of language. But it really wasn't helpful in trying to efficiently communicate what we were trying to do in the status of our projects and development efforts. So I had the brilliant idea of opening a JIRA project up to the client. I spent a few days putting together security regimes, redoing everybody's security profile, coming up with different ways of doing this, opened it up to the client, released the client, and found that it was a huge waste of my time. The problem was, well, first, if I open it up to the client, everybody would want their own account to be able to get into there. My license count would have exploded, and there was no way the finance team was going to let us do that. The second problem, which was kind of interesting, was human nature. People did not want to use somebody else's tools. If they had a problem with their workflow, they wanted to do something internally to complain about it, or they would go over to talk to the support guy. Nobody was very interested in filing a JIRA ticket for us. Even though we were very, very ingrained in the culture, we were the lead tech vendor, nobody wanted to do it. So instead, we focused internally with JIRA. Sure, you've all done it. You have labels. We made a ton of custom fields and a whole bunch of filters. This was the real foundation for our being able to have responsiveness to various issues and be able to report in real time across all of these different groups. I mean, all those groups before, that structure didn't change. All those people had to see things in real time. So we built our foundation with labels, custom fields, built a whole ton of filters. We also added automation. In the talk, Mike was talking about how there's robots that automatically do the updates of statuses as actions are taken. Well, we actually did that. We coded that ourselves in our environment in 2011. And what we would do was we would update various fields based on actions being taken either in Git or in Bamboo or whatever was going on at any given time. For example, I didn't highlight it there, but the effects versions could be updated when the ticket was filed. It would be automatically populated depending. The branch was created as soon as Git opened up the branch. Statuses would change as various things. You would commit into the release branch. It is now completed and ready for deployment. Or as soon as it's deployed, verified in production. The fixed version, as soon as it was tagged, the bug was updated with that. Labels would be changed. We didn't do this a lot, unfortunately. It turned out to be a little bit of a heavy lift, but it was useful. There's one of the labels there. It says OFA small track. That was our short list of immediate high priority issues. As soon as something was fixed, it went to fix, that label was removed. We also set up macroed exporting. Like I said, nobody wanted to log into our JIRA from the campaign, but they still wanted these updates. Finance people wanted the updates, the tech leads wanted their updates. A lot of different people wanted to hear where the status on the issues were. So what we did was we took a whole bunch of those filters that I created early on, and we made simple CSV macro exports. Put them on a place, created it. One of the guys created an API call. It wasn't used a lot because a lot of the people weren't technical that were using this, but it was handy for the people that had to retrieve it. Pull it up, and it's immediate list of what is happening in JIRA at any given time with the issues they are concerned about. The other thing was I took Confluence and we made dashboards as pages. We had a lot of technical details, a lot of notes, project outlines, various specs. We had gadgets in there. We had a whole bunch of bullet lists. The useful part of this was the folks that were embedded in the campaign. Those guys, they had the toughest job I've ever had the pleasure to watch somebody do. It was probably the worst field engineer job I've ever seen anyone have. Constantly, they pulled 80-hour weeks. They were constantly in the office, 11 p.m., maybe go home, grab a couple hours of sleep, get back at 6 a.m. So they didn't have time to pull stuff together. So if they had to go to a status meeting, all they did was they went to the Confluence page that we had everything dynamically running for them. They would be able to throw that up on the screen, give an immediate breakdown and report, and be able to answer questions by clicking on the links, looking at the gadgets, whatever was necessary. This was the biggest thing of all, though. Chat rooms. I put this together before I knew the whole content of the summit this year. In 2012, we used Campfire. HipChat wasn't there yet, which we do now, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But using alerts, webhooks, and APIs, it totally changed how we were able to respond to the client needs. As I said, emails were constantly going out. People were trying to do things to respond. Social media teams were trying to put responses out there, or they were trying to process a ton of donations. Those emails that went out there, can you believe what Governor Romney just said? Click here to donate $5 to help stop this. Those were very, very successful. There was one point in time, tens of millions of dollars off of a single email were raised, and the average contribution was like $40. So it's tons of contributions coming through. When those are happening, if there's a bug, if there's a problem, if there's an outage, that immediacy of response was there. So with the webhooks, the APIs, the alerts, and the chat rooms, we were actually able to really speed up the results, and the response, excuse me. We had a ton of bots. They provided extended communications for us. Campfire at the time did not have the cool @mention stuff that HipChat does. We still use some of those bots, but it has been replaced by the HipChat. Interactive and responsive. The other thing was they were fun. We put some fun functionality into it. You leave a whole bunch of developers alone with something automated, they're going to get bored and they're going to tinker with it and make it fun for them to use, which then in turn encourages people to use these rooms. So we would then take some of those rooms and open them for client access. You can do this with HipChat. Have a room where customers can jump in. They were able to leave a question. It's 2:30 in the morning in Chicago. There's 78 people in that office in Chicago at that time working on something. They know nobody is up in Boston though. So they would just leave a question in the room and somebody would catch it and answer it. It was great for firefighting. Everybody could jump in. They could swear at us. We could say we're trying to fix it. They could swear at us. It was actually a really good customer feedback loop for us. I joke, but it really was, and it also gave us the ability to visibly show that we are responding to their immediate needs. Now, you all have these clients that just sit there and if that ticket is open for more than an hour, they're on the phone to somebody. This kind of thing helps alleviate some of that. We also created our bot is a Who bot that we call BSD bot. There's a whole bunch of people talking about fun things to do. That's where it comes from. We have a ton of scripts in there that allow us to have interactive responses. You can ask the bot a question. It will come back with an answer. It'll pull something either out of JIRA, or it'll get you an animated GIF. And I said GIF. I refuse to say anything else. Whatever you want. We've added tons of functionality. Very, very simple scripting. So our solutions were kind of solved by this whole thing of having the personal contact there and giving those personal contacts the tools to have real-time information at their fingertips to be able to give that message. It's not, I have to call Boston, or, you know what, I have a status meeting in 20 minutes, let me find out the answer for you. 9 times out of 10, the answer was right there on the laptop for them. We had all of our tools in sync. JIRA talks to Confluence, talks to HipChat, talks to Bamboo. Like I said, as soon as everything's in there, that ecosystem ran and updated things as we went along. This led us to be able to manage the speed of our projects a little better. We had several functional teams across different parts of the tools. When a bug or an enhancement request would come in, it's really hard to tell unless you're part of those teams sometimes, who it goes to. So what we did was we took a few developers and we created the team OFA, which allowed us to be able to have a selection of talents from there to provide this sort of response and triage, and a lot of times solve the problem themselves, which allowed the rest of the team to take care of other development needs, other client needs, and still be able to respond if needed from the other team's responses. Now, the team that we put together, some were in Chicago, some of them were in Boston. So everything lived in the JIRA tickets, everything. All the comment threads on some of the JIRA tickets we have, your scroll bar widget is about this small, but when you load the ticket in. But it allowed everybody to stay on the same page. And then we ended up migrating to more of an agile board approach, We had a Kanban board that we had set up, and that allowed for us to be able to have quicker releases, get the work done, get the response in there, and go. The problem is when you get increased speed, you increase your complexity, you increase your risk. And that was the tough part, and that's where we were able to then take those tools and mitigate that risk as much as possible by keeping everybody on real time. And our lessons learned? Flexibility. We needed to be flexible, quick response. So we had the other team, we put those automated systems together, we had a bunch of boards, we had a bunch of the tools in there. We made this response happen by basically creating that foundation and allowing the JIRA and Confluence tools to be able to provide that information when we needed it. Created our ecosystem, and it is now being, not just in the tech part of our company, the entire company is starting to use the ecosystem to manage all of our projects. We combined a bunch of our teams. We found that the multiple team thing wasn't working, so we combined them. Now we have a dev team, a DevOps team for lack of a better term, and a QA team, which we then have the ability to respond. There's a bunch of stuff in here. I'm actually running a little short on time, but I'm just going to talk quickly about how we managed to get rid of a lot of cruft and a lot of inefficiency. We moved over all of our projects to JIRA Agile using that kind of real-time project management. We also adopted Zephyr. Quick plug for Zephyr. Their test case stuff is great if you're using, as a QA director, all my team's test cases are in Zephyr, and they allow them to populate on the boards, and there is interaction there. So we were able to focus, and this is scenes from election night, as the team is all there monitoring everything, and then we were able to party. We were able to celebrate after a victory. Honestly, I've never had an experience quite like it. It was very intense, very fast-paced, but well worth it. And a quick few seconds I have left. HipChat solved even more problems for us that we didn't even know we had. The use of @mentions, we were able to alias a whole bunch of @mentions, which then allowed for teams to be emailed. So somebody puts a @devat or @something in a room. It actually sends the email notification to an alias that a bunch of people get email notifications on, so we can get the team involved in. Things like that really have worked well, and the multiple clients on mobile devices, another big part of that. So basically, we were able to support the rapidly changing needs of a campaign. We were able to maintain that visibility, and we are looking forward to 2016 when we're going to get to do something like that all over again, I'm sure. So thank you.